Welcome everyone to another episode of the Coach's Corner. I hope you're having a great evening. Let the coaches come in and kind of get settled. Tonight we have Duke Brannos, Duke Eliahu, and Sir Helga from the West. The topic this evening we're going to be discussing is dealing mentally with not being able to fight. And this could be either due to injury or age or some kind of other reason. Obviously, the last couple of years we've been dealing with not fighting for yet even another reason. So we know it's been a challenge, and it can be very difficult because a lot of us we find a kind of a spiritual outlet in fighting, and it's hard to deal with when you can't release through that medium. So we're very excited to have everybody on. As per usual, please post comments in the live feed, and we will get to every question we can. If we don't, it's certainly nothing personal. We'll just try to get to everything we can. Please try to keep the questions on topic, and we'll do the best we can to address each one of them. So with that, Brannos, would you care to get started?
Sure. I think we have a couple of great stories tonight, and we're hoping to, all of us, and that includes our audience and everyone listening, probably have had some issues through either in the SCA or outside the SCA regarding sports, or it could be anything. Could be your art. It could be anything that you're passionate about. And tonight we're trying to cover, kind of how to get through that. And sometimes there's not a way through. Sometimes, at the end, there's a point where you have to take a step back, realize what's happening, and make a decision. That doesn't mean that you have to give up on what you do. It's just you find where your new place is. So we're going to try to cover some of that. I think we have a pretty good audience tonight, or a pretty good coaching crew tonight to cover a number of pieces. And we hope it helps a little. That's one of our big pieces. And goes talking to Helga. So she's like, prompt me when you're ready to go on a story. And to tell you the truth, I'm so eager to hear about this story already, because she kind of spilled the beans to me. I didn't even know how much she had gone through, but I find it super motivational. And I think she's going to go through it, but I think you have the right mindset, you have the drive, and you can come back. So Helga, I'm going to throw this one right to you, and then we'll come off of that and back up a little bit and cover the mental side of all of this, and I'm sure you're going to cover some of that too.
So one of the things that we all agreed about is not doing war stories tonight. However, I have been asked to share some of the injuries that I've gone through. So I started fighting probably before it was, actually I know it was before it was legal, but I started fighting at 16, and I was in a bad horse wreck right before I turned 17. I know what it feels like to be drawn and quartered. And I ripped out both shoulders. I did a bunch of damage across my pecs and my spine. And I grew up in poverty, so medical treatment, pew pew, not so much. In the process, I damaged both shoulders pretty badly. Luckily, when I was 17, almost 18, we actually managed to get me into surgery, where they reconstructed my right shoulder with 9 pins and cadaver parts. When I woke up off the table, one of the first things I remember, because you never remember the first couple times those nurses poke you, is the surgeon saying, "Hey, I'll see you when you're 35. You may never touch your face again. And you sure as hell aren't ever going back to sports." And I bought it for a little while, and I went through PT, and then I got back into riding horses, and then I eked my way back into armor because I'm stubborn. Also, I had some really, really awesome friends. And I was physically capable and strong enough to push through the lack in my shoulder. I build muscle weirdly in there because of the damage. And what ended up happening is, like, in my early to mid 20s, I got back into rig for a couple years, and then would fight, and then I couldn't use my arm the next day. And my left shoulder recovered much better from the initial wreck than my right did, because I'm incredibly right hand dominant. And then in my mid 20s, I started having some really bad issues with my shoulder. Like I would fight and then I couldn't use it for a week. And what ended up happening is Hans and I were like walking back to the house for some odd reason, and he started to notice that I was switching my hands to open the doors. I couldn't turn my hand anymore. I had no power or anything else like that. And also I was having a lot of elbow pain in the process. And so late 20s, I went back into surgery because I actually went and had my elbow checked, and they're like, your triceps tendon is ripping out because I was hypercompensating from my shoulder down into my elbow. And also don't throw bad wraps, by the way. Like just don't do it. Like mechanics and wraps, it's our most risky shot. So I went back under the table and they reattached my triceps tendon. I have a nice scar for that one. And in the process, they dislocated my shoulder on the table. When they went to move me, they literally pulled my arm out of socket, which we already knew was possibly an issue. But the surgeon then came back and was like, "We're going to MRI your shoulder. I think I can fix it." And after getting the shoulder MRI'd, he actually went back in and he did what's called a capsular rotation, where they basically cut the head off your shoulder. They rotate the bones with all the tendons attached still, and then they sink it back in. So I've got pins into my shoulder. From there, I had my radial head tendon reconstructed. I had the form of my radial head reconstructed in my arm because they missed that in the first surgery. And it comes down to, I went through 5 surgeries to be able to fight again. In between surgery 4 and surgery 5, me and horses, I broke my back. So I did L4, L5, and it didn't get bad enough that I had to learn how to walk again, but I definitely had to relearn how to touch my toes. This gifted me with a major opportunity to figure it out, because over the spans of almost 3 years, I went through 4 surgeries, a broken back, and being told by multiple times I would never make it back on the field. I would never be a legitimate threat on the field. I might be able to get back for a little bit of fun, but then it was going to be too much on my body and everything else like that. And luckily, the reason why I'm here today is I had an amazing sports physio, and I also had an amazing group of knights and friends around me that would just be like, "You're having a bad day. Cool, great. Whatever, fight left-handed." And so they helped me when I would fall. I had people that would pick me up. And today I can tell you that I am a better fighter for everything that I went through, because I had to learn how to physically be mechanically correct all the time. I can definitely still tell to this day when I throw a shot wrong, because I will pay for it later. And so that's kind of like the background and history of what I went through. And it doesn't highlight the frustration, the tears, literally sitting on my floor, like trying to do a push-up. I couldn't do it for almost a year and a half. Like I couldn't physically push off the floor. And if you can't do that, you can't really hold a shield or fight. And so like Hans would stand over the top of me and grab the back of my sports bra and shirt, and just like as little as he could so we could rebuild all the muscles in my arms, because they severed everything through here to reattach it. And then around the side of my elbow, everything was removed and then put back together. Yeah, I've got more screws and pins in my right arm than I probably should. So Brannos, do you want me to go over some of the mental
Yeah,
stuff
I think,
you know, that later?
Yeah, no, let's go ahead. What did you, I mean, you obviously had some struggle. I mean, I know, and we'll cover some of this, but you know, it's a difficult thing losing something that you're so passionate about. The good, you know, a little bit of the good part for you is you didn't have all of the history yet. So it happened relatively early. So for me, I'll give you this much, and that is your drive to come back is amazing. Because a lot of people, when they're not that far into a sport, they're not so attached that they just want it even more. It's usually that people have had a lot of years, and that's how they identify themselves. And so for you to make it this far is amazing. So, but what kind of, you know, that mental place where you're like, hey, you know, hopefully you can touch your face, or, you know, you forget sports the rest of your life, you know, and figure out what you're going to do. How did that affect you?
So originally it affected me really badly. So right before the wreck, I was actually signed on for an 8-year contract to be a Marine. I was graduating early. I was supposed to go off to basic, like, bang, done, gone, signing 8-year contract. And so that ended that. And that literally ended my entire planned out career thought path, like Marines, fighting, come back, be law enforcement. Ha! Gone. And so luckily you're adaptable when you're really young. Like that's one of the things that I will say is that don't ever forget your adaptability, no matter what your age is. You get to continue to write your own history and your own story. I was just lucky to earn this or learn this much younger in life. And so anytime I had a cascading injury, I got to be like, well, apparently it's character reset. How stubborn am I going to be this time? And so part of the mental and emotional, like, want to get back to it. When I found fighting for me is like riding horses. And I would like to note that riding horses, I've had my hip broken, I've had my femur broken, I've had my ocular orbit snapped into my face. I've done my jaw twice. I've done some really, sorry, my dog is having fun behind me, by the way. I've done some really, really stupid things in my life, and I've rode some really rank horses, and I still go back to it. To this day, you can't stop me from doing that, and it's the same thing with fighting. And part of the way that I got back mentally was, one, understanding the community gave me a gift when I found it. I would not say that I came from the best family. I would not say that I came from the best background in my entire life. And when I found the fighting community, I found home. And so the idea of losing it was just devastating. Like, it was just monstrous. It was worse than being like, oh, hey, you may never touch your face again. I was like, nah, I'll figure that out. Like, screw you. But like the idea of losing that community was devastating. And part of what brought me back to it was realizing that I could still be a part of the community in a different way. So we go through sorrow because we're looking at something in a selfish manner. What have we lost versus what can we give back? And so I came back and I got super obsessive about video analysis and watching other people fight and figuring out how I could support the fighting community while I was recovering from things. And that gave me a way to stay engaged and stay very real within the community, without needing to seek my own validation with it, without needing to be the biggest dog. And so when the surgeons came back again and told me, like, look, you're never going to fight again. Like, you're never going to do this. And I was like, whatever, I'll figure it out. Because I didn't lose my sense of self to the injury. I may have lost what I could do within the community, but I didn't lose how the community affected me and how I could affect the community. And I think that that's something that if I could gift that to any knight that is aging out of their like sport right now, or aging out of their like max level prowess, to be like, okay, now it's just time to like look at how you can gift back. That's it. Like, and that fed me and kept me going to where I can like go back and forth. And so when I needed to recover, I could take a couple weeks, months, 5.5 years, and come back and then go back to that part where I get to be like, nope, now it's about me. And if anybody has any questions about that, I can get all weird and philosophical, but we'll keep going. I'm a spiteful creature. I'm an incredibly spiteful creature. And so when I get told you don't ever get to do this again, I'm going to figure out how. And if I don't care how many pieces and parts and like things that I need to work out to get there, I will. Cool, great. You can't touch your face? Well, sweet. I'm going to start by like learning how to touch my shoulder again. Can't throw a flat snap? Sweet. I'm going to figure out how to generate as much power as I need with just my feet. Then we'll get my arm involved. We'll go from there.
So I think Eli had something real quick. Eli, I think he was calling us out a little bit on that getting old thing. I don't know. I feel vulnerable.
Yeah, I think it was probably 15 or 20 years ago. Some fellow came up to me and said that he appreciated the example I was setting of a knight in retirement, And I said, oh, you what now? And I took him out. I said, let's test this. And I took him out on the field, and I may have exercised the power part of my prowess on parts of him more than I usually do. But it is true that age comes to everyone. And yeah, you lose a step, but hopefully you gain something in wisdom too. And I think the transition to being a coach and being a teacher and being a trainer, this is something that we've been doing here. And this is one of the things that's really valuable in what we're doing. One of the problems I've seen with that, and I think it's something in the society, is that people are reluctant to take your instruction until you beat them up first. And until you prove that you can defeat them on the field, some people are not going to listen to you. And I think that's something that maybe this forum is also helping to address. But Helga said something about recovering from injury being an opportunity to learn new and learn correct technique. And when I authorized in 1979, so I've been doing it a long time, and I've known people who had crazy techniques that they eventually couldn't do anymore because their own techniques caused them injury. And so learning technique that is viable in the long term, that is physiologically sound, that the body mechanics are correct, is really important if you want to keep doing this for the long term. And I had I think it was about 20 years ago now, I had to have my wrist reconstructed, reconnected rather. And I used that as an opportunity coming back from that to learn to update my style and my technique and my footwork and my movement and everything. And coming back from this took physical training, physical therapy, but the learning a new technique and a new system and a new style probably took 2 years, 3 years of twice a week practices for that to become the default system and replace what I'd done for the previous 25 years. So it's an opportunity. Injury can be an opportunity, and part of it's always challenging because it's challenging for your fortitude, the virtue of fortitude and perseverance, but it's challenging to be a beginner again in some ways. And you're not completely, but that also ties into something else we're going to talk about, which is burnout, which I can come back to in a bit.
So let's go ahead, and I'm going to pass it back to Helga because I'm going to apologize. I cut her off a little bit. We're still working. We don't work a lot together here. This is so we're working on transitions. So I cut you off. I apologize. Let's start.
No, like never apologize. That was a fantastic thing to cover. Please, like, I'm just excited to be here.
well, and I really like that you're hitting some of the points that really I started posting up earlier, and you're hitting them in order in a way. So, and
I promise I'm not trying to just cheat off your notes.
No, it's awesome.
So Eliahu actually transitioned into like the next thing that I was going to cover is there's two things that I really kind of hyper focused on while I was recovering. Is one that like you're never going to be what you were. It's that whole like, well, I was once this cool. Like there's a damn country song about it. Is you need to treat yourself as a new version instead of trying to be your old version. I will never be the 185-pound, 15% body fat chick I was right before the horse wreck. Like, never going to be there. I was powerlifting for fun, and I could throw a 120-pound hay bale 5 stacks up. Like, no fucks. Never happening again. However, this version of me knows how to use my body a lot better. Like, I'm not tearing myself apart. And so the one thing, and my favorite thing that popped up, and I can't remember who said this to me, but it has stuck with me my entire life, is when you're injured, you need to treat that injury like a worthy opponent instead of an obstacle to overcome. Because we spend time studying how to deal with worthy opponents. We honor them and how they affect us. We do not do that for obstacles. Obstacles, we figure out how to tear down, bulldoze through, and move past. You will never move past an injury. You, however, can live with an injury and be better for an injury because it's going to teach you how to honor your body better.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, totally. I think, it's interesting because, I've been dealing the last number of years with a lot of different things, and I'm still, probably, and I see Rongalder is out in watching as well. We're both dealing with the loss of practice, which is very difficult for us because that was the place we went to get through lots of things in life, like depression and things like that. And we kind of covered this, but I'm just going to call it out in what they are, and that is when you lose something through injury, through age, through time or family or whatever that takes you away from it, you lose that sense of identity sometimes, especially if you've been doing it for a long time. Especially if you're on, if you're a knight or you're on top of the game or you're great on belt, or, even if it's, you made family there and you kind of lose that, you feel like you're losing that sense of identity, and that's hard. And then there's the sense of self-esteem that goes with that. It's like you're part of a group, but when you can't do what they're doing, you're like, well, maybe I'm not. And you reflect inside. It's a terrible place to go. And what I was talking about is that constructive way to cope with stress. And when I say stress, it's like just life, cope with life. I know for me, I started in martial arts when I was 17. Did some before, but really when I was 17, I went to martial arts because I needed to get past a lot of things, including some severe depression. And really fighting, I fought for 35 years to keep that depression away. And unfortunately, I'm at that point where it concerns me if I can keep doing it. I just had my left shoulder replaced. And when I say replaced, I mean new titanium. So, I guess I'm halfway to a robot. The bad part is I have to get the right gun. And, most doctors I went to are like, yeah, you're done. Maybe you can button your shirt after we're done. But, so, this is kind of like Helga here. We hear all this bad news. Sometimes it's not bad news. They're telling us good news, but it's not the news we want to hear. Right. Nope. And I think what we're trying to get here is we're trying to get a point to make sure, and it's what's been great is in the chat going, lots of people have had injuries and really it's coming back from them. They look forward to coming back from them. They look to push through them. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to put in a place that it isn't impossible. It doesn't mean that you can do it. There's injuries out there that's absolutely, I know somebody in the SCA who got knighted and a year later was told, you get hit in the back and you're not going to pick up your kids ever again. So, that's, I know what my decision would be. So it's difficult, but really what we're trying to do is get you a place where hopefully you can take those three things I just mentioned and then some solutions to that. And Helga just went through a bunch of them, right? And Eli just went through the benefit he had, both of them benefits they have from injuries that occurred, from being told maybe you shouldn't do it. I'm Eli, and you can go ahead and talk about that. I'm sure there was that place where you're like, maybe I can't. I mean, you've had a number of injuries in just kind of in the past couple of years, right? You're on mute. You're still on mute.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. Multiple hand surgeries and broken toes and other issues. But I think one of the themes throughout what Helga was talking about is the virtue of perseverance, fortitude as a chivalric virtue. And I agree with that. I think that there is a point at which people have to be realistic and say, yeah, if it's a choice between doing this thing I enjoy or doing everything else that's meaningful to me, yeah, you have to make a choice. And I've seen people make the wrong choice. And we've all seen people prioritize the SCA over the rest of their lives in ways that are not productive, not healthy, not beneficial. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about not giving up, reinventing yourself. Life is constant reinvention, but also being realistic. What can you do? How can you do it? Can you do it differently? Sir Pavel out in Callantyre, the late Sir Pavel out in Callantyre, had many, many injuries and many stories about them in his life. I remember hearing that there was a tent at Lily's where a tent was struck by lightning. And the first thing I asked was, how's Pavel? And it was indeed Pavel who was struck by lightning, because he was just that guy. He had to have his sword taped around his hand to be able to fight, but he was determined to do it. Well, yeah, but there are other people who have injuries where if they fight again, it will be severely limiting to the rest of their life. So you have to exercise judgment as well. And I mentioned that I'd come back to the issue of burnout, because that can also be an issue. No matter how much you love doing a thing or how meaningful it is to you, you can also get to a point where it becomes stale. You need to find, and sometimes the best way to reinvigorate your interest in it is to do something else. And that, for me, 3 years ago, so it was before the start of the pandemic, I went to a dojo. I started studying at a dojo. And because I needed to find a beginner's mind again, and a beginner's spirit, and a beginner's body, well, obviously I know how to move in certain ways, but I needed to find something different. And it wouldn't have had to have been that. It could have been ballroom dancing or ballet or I don't know, horseback riding sounds too dangerous to me now.
Yeah, no kidding.
But then I used to ride a motorcycle, so I'm not one to talk. So but that's been really significant. And it's another community, the same sense of community that Helga talked about and Brannos has talked about in the SCA fighting community. I found at the dojo as well. And that's been really beneficial. And I was able to do Zoom classes during that as well, during the pandemic for that. And then Brannos also started doing these Zoom footwork drills, which are really terrific. So it's inventing new ways to stay involved, to reinvigorate your mind and your body and your spirit and your heart. And sometimes it's going outside the SCA and then bringing the knowledge back in. And as I did with painting, learning from people outside the SCA and then bringing it back in and doing it. And there's a whole bunch of areas where you can do that. It's one of the great things about the SCA, how broad the area of interests are. But I think that I'm looking forward to getting back in armor. and doing
I'm happy to hear that. Actually, it's I look forward to having you back in armor
Thank you.
and back. I'm going to throw this back at Helga. We have a chat going on the side, and she talked about a couple of things, and one I definitely want to hear about is one thing that she noticed, kind of the mental difference between pain and re-injury. So right back at you.
All right. Well, all right. So one of the things in recovery, and we can talk about like our own recoveries, but there's actually some physiological things that we go through, and you learn how to deal with. We are creatures that are very easily programmed. And when we're injured, literally it hits the survival chunk of our brain. And it says, hey, you're injured. Don't do that again. Like that sucked. And so we learn to protect an injury. And this is where we see a lot of professional athletes fail and never actually get back to being an athlete. Are we professional athletes? No. Do we actually have a better recovery rate? Actually, we do in the SCA for the most part, is actually have a very high recovery rate because we aren't professional athletes. And we learn to adapt around stuff, but also we're not using ourselves at 100% all the time. However, when we do a significant joint injury, we will spend a chunk of our brain dealing with, don't re-injure this, don't re-injure this, don't re-injure this. And that's constantly going on in the back of your mind. And so you actually have to focus on learning to identify when you are favoring an old injury that is recovered. My shoulder is one of them. And typically, amusingly enough, it takes getting hit in it. Like it takes a traumatic event to get over the trauma. And I can tell you the exact moment it happened for me because Vivek slot shotted me on top of that scar. Oh.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden we watched my shoulder get much more free in the motion, everything else that I'd been going through in PT, because my brain went, oh, you can survive this. Like, This isn't going to re-injure your body. It hurts, it sucks, but it isn't going to kill you. And so that's one of those things that you yourself as an individual need to figure out how to push your recovery within the scope of our fighting. So if you've had an ACL replacement and you don't trust your knee, do you need to wear a brace? Do you need to go out and do squats in your armor? Do you need to add the extra stimulus to your brain to say it is safe to be in my rig doing what we do so I can then use the joint that has been repaired? Do I need to change my armor to do this, to feel safe? I wore a full arm harness. I fight in early period. I fought in like a 16th century arm harness for almost 2 years because I hated getting hit in the scars. It caused a panic. And also one of the things that we all have to realize is that you're not just going to smoothly transition back. And we need to recognize that and be okay with that. And we need to be okay with that for ourselves and for others. Because when somebody's coming back, they're not going to come back 100%. Let them not be 100% until they say, hey, I need to get pushed. Like, or they give you too many yeah buts. That's them also asking to be pushed, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
So in that, you also have to ID a very key thing. What is the difference between the pain of recovery and the pain of re-injury? Again, you're going to figure this out. You'll probably figure this out during PT, because I'm sorry, if anybody says PT is a delightful thing, they're masochists, and they are like hardcore masochists. I'm out. And this is one of those things that you're also going to learn the same thing in armor. When you're doing something while you're recovering from an injury, your body is going to try to protect it. You are going to get more sore. You are going to feel strain in the joint. You are going to feel like something is off and weird. That is going to take time to understand the difference of you re-injuring yourself and causing the same issue, or you recovering from an injury. Again, seek out a physical health expert on this one. Highly recommend that difference. Actually, also talk to people that have recovered from the same injury. It's going to give you more knowledge to apply to yourself.
Yeah, and that's important, right? I mean, we are responsible for our own bodies. It's not anyone else in the end. You can ask for help, and that help is going to come from PT specialists, friends, through motivation and all of those other things. But the only way you can get that is by asking. So a lot of times we get in that space where it's like you're mad and you don't want to reach out and do those things. Probably the worst thing you can do. It's okay to let people know that you're sad. In fact, be sad because it sucks. Be okay with it. right? And then deal with that, and that dealing with it will be, well, here's the things I can do. Maybe I'm going to go walk every day because my shoulders are gone. And then after I get good at walking, I'm going to, and feel good about it, then I'm going to add some other, squats or other things that make me healthy. Find the things that you can do to kind of build that inner self back up again. And then set some realistic goals so that you can make these goals and get that good feeling so that you feel like you're progressing forward. And those are super, super important. And, I think, these are just a few pieces that you can do on the road back to recovery. And that recovery, again, is maybe it's not even a fight again. It could just be recovery. So you can be around your friends again and feel part of it. They actually mentally be in a better place. I mean, and be there and be able to physically do things when you are older, if you're younger. Because if you never recover, it only gets worse. You have to take an active role in fixing yourself. And again, it's hard because the first thing you want to do is just give up everything. So, and that's fine. And you're not the only one. And it's okay to admit it to people. And it's and hopefully they come back, and it's okay to say, hey, I don't need a fix. I just need to get this out. I just need you to listen, because sometimes that's all it takes. Then you're like, okay, it's out. I'm done feeling bad for myself. I'm going to do something else. So just be aware, there's ways to slowly heal yourself, both physically and mentally. And it was interesting. Helga talked about getting hit in that spot and actually releasing that. And a lot of that is mentally, you're thinking about that hurt part all the time. This is a fundamental part of flow in fighting. If you're mentally thinking, you're essentially hurting your own game, because the more you're mentally thinking about something else, the less you're mentally being able to make decisions. So after getting hit and you're like, oh, I'm okay, all of that goes away. That first time is the hardest time. It's, I read an article the other day on flow that first 4-minute mile took people forever, years and years, as people were like, there is no way anybody could do a 4-minute mile. Guy hits a 4-minute mile, in the next 2 years, dozens do. Well, it was no different 30 years before, but why was the difference? Because now somebody did it, and all those people are like, oh, it's doable. And they started being able to do that. And that's that releasing that part of counter thinking in your mind. So, Eli.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've seen is people being encouraged to fight when they are injured, and should not be fighting because they're still recovering from the injury, because it's somebody outside their body telling them how they should feel and what they should think. And there's we have to respect people's decision to fight or not fight based on their own recovery. They have to be aware of where they are with it, and we can help them with that. But telling somebody who's recovering from an injury to just suck it up and fight anyway, in a way that when they're not ready, they could, it's the difference between pain and re-injury. They could if they're prone to re-injury at a point in their recovery, then they shouldn't be fighting. They can be doing other kinds of physical training, but somebody sitting out is when they should be slowly getting back into it, easing back into it, is another dimension of protecting the injury by avoidance. It's not just thinking about protecting it, it's avoidance of being in a situation that's going to could potentially lead to re-injury. I think, and I'm sure I've done that. I'm sure we've all done that following an injury. But that's something I wanted to mention, that there are two sides of that. And it's trusting and listening to your own self and listening to your own body and paying attention to what signals you're getting from your body and the advice of your medical professionals in helping you get on the road back, and not necessarily listening to outside voices to tell you to fight or not fight, or do something or not do something when they're not in your body. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to really making good decisions for yourself. It is, I mean, no matter what, it is a coach's responsibility to try to motivate you. And I'm going to throw something back at Helga in a minute that she posted, but it's their chance to support you, motivate you to move on, find ways that you could work around the injury and still participate. And I think all of those are really important. But in the end, you have to know how that feels. And you know, the key there is, if you jump straight back in, you could very much hurt yourself. You build back in, you have a better opportunity to recognize, you know, like Helga, okay, if I do this blow, I'm not going to move that arm for a day. Well, you probably just learned something, you know. It's those kinds of things. I'm in the same place. I'll fight, you know, with, you know, cartilage gone on my shoulders. I've been managing that for about 5 years now. And I finally, I know what a 10 feels like. Everyone's like, hey, what's your pain scale, 1 to 10? Well, I have no damn clue, because, you know, either I can do it or physically I can't do it. Well, a 10 is when you're literally screaming without knowing, like something twists and you scream and you can't stop it. Or you go to your knees because something twinges in your shoulder and you lose your breath. So, you know, it's very difficult to tell those places, but you have to be able to manage your body. It's nobody else's job. But understand everybody else wants to help you get there, and there's lots of different ways. Helga, I think you were just going to talk about the idea of, you know, that fighter community and trying to help people that may not be able to come back right away.
Helps if I unmute myself. Also, you couldn't see behind the scenes. I'm just like, he's talking about the silent scream, or like the scream that you don't know that you're making, and I'm just like, yeah, that's what a 10 is, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been a couple comments made, and I wanted to address them, like the history of telling people not to fight when they're injured, yet pushing them, the all or nothing community. The idea that, you know, bad training exists. Yeah, of course bad training exists. Like, we've all seen that enough. But one of the things is, we self-create the all or nothing community by choosing not to listen to ourselves and or dying to our own egos or the egos of those around us. One of the things that I will tell you is that you have to be adaptable within your own mind. If you want to continue, like, if you are an unbelt and you are majorly injured and you have a bunch of nights, okay, actually, we're going to do a personal story time here real quick. I fought really, really well in the Crown right before I went out to my last surgery. I then had a group of knights walk up to me and tell me, because I had told somebody, hey, I'm out for a elbow surgery after this. We will never vote for you because you chose to be broken. You would have passed.
Whoa, okay.
Yep. As an unbelt, I had that happen 6 weeks before I was going into surgery. You want to talk about soul crushing?
Yeah.
I came back with a lot of motherfuckers to prove wrong. Excuse my language. But
no need to apologize for your language, because yeah, fuck those guys.
Well, but also, like, you'll actually learn in the community. So we allow those negative voices. I let that negative voice rule me for the first 6 months coming back. You want to talk about depression and wallowing in my own self-pity of I may never come back and do this thing again. Oh, every time I'd wake up and I'd hear his voice. Like, first time I just rocked him super hard after I came back, though.
Did you thank him? Thank you for those words you gave me.
Yeah, thank you. Really? Cool. But one of the things is we have to remember we create our own house with that. And so we have to be aware of the pressures we are putting on ourselves and how we then apply that to the community. So if we believe that we are being pressured to only being the best, that only Dukes are accepted, that only Dukes are real fighters, and that unless you're a Duke, you're not a real fighter, and so you have to recover from this injury and become a Duke, guess what? You're going to live in your own hell. However, if you look at it and say, I would like to get back in armor, that is my first stage of recovery. I want to be safe and I want to be physically healthy enough to get back in armor. I don't need to be competitive. Once you get there, then you reassess that goal and go from there. And if we as fighters start looking at the community like that and encouraging people that are injured, especially, to come back, don't tell them, oh, you could still be a Duke. Oh, you could still be this. You could still win crown. You want to know what? You can get back into rig and have fun, and you are still valid for that. You want to also know how that's going to help, and I'm not trying to call out the other two coaches on here right now. That helps our older generation that is no longer in that competitive bracket. Not that Brannos couldn't just eat me for lunch on the field exactly the way he is right now. Eliahu, I'm pretty sure you could school me too. But
I think that there are techniques that more techniques I've forgotten than you have yet to learn.
See? But that's the thing, is that if we take that on as a community and we start openly talking about this, especially our upper end fighters that are then dealing with injuries, you want to know what the unbelts are going to take on? They're going to take on, go take the time to recover. I'm not worried about coming back for that belt right now. We don't tell fighters, oh, we're never going to knight you because you chose to be injured. Sit on it. I'll go get in a fist fight for you. You call me, I will fly to your kingdom and I will deal with that personally. But that's the thing, is we create our own hell as fighters, thinking the only valid fighters are the top best, that are in the best physical shape. Guess what? We're a spectrum. We're a giant spectrum of the weekend warriors, still fighters, all the way up to Super Duke so-and-so, who cough cough is also on this show. Still valid and give to the sport and have fun, because the idea is we're a volunteer organization where we voluntarily beat the shit out of each other with sticks. Guess what? Just show up and have fun. And if you embody that, you will find that you will recover so much quicker mentally, because you stop setting yourself for these failable goals. Set yourself a real goal. Go from there. You ever want to crack up, ask Duke Sean about my knighting plan? Like, every time he'd ask me, no matter where it was, 5 years, we'll talk about it. 5 years, we'll talk. I got offered. And he's like, so how's that knighting plan going? I said, in 5 years, we'll talk about it. Like, set yourself real things that you can have fun with and hit. I want to be back in armor. I want to go fight with a polearm. I want to go do these things again. Make that happen. You'll change the community around you.
Yeah, I agree. And you'll motivate that community, and you'll build friends. And, it's even in times like this, when we're not able to fight, we're talking about fighting, we're discussing it, we're sharing, and realistically, through COVID, they had a chance through shows like this and everything else to make a lot of new friends. We've got a lot of people talking in our chat that probably never met each other, but they're talking about stuff and they're sharing stuff. And it's that type of thing that brings our community better and back together, and it makes us care for one another. And it's really one of the most special things about what we have going. And right now we can't practice that a lot, but as much as we used to, but it's going to be there. It's going to come back as strong as ever. And I look forward to that, and just burning through a few more line items, just because I want to touch base, maintain a positive attitude no matter what. So, this is, we go through being sad and all of these other pieces, kind of number 4 on my list. And I know, I hate listing stuff out, but maintaining a positive attitude. So we have to get to that positive attitude. But then when you have it, it's like, you know what, I'm going to go to practice. I'm going to watch people. I'm going to just hang out and talk with people. I'm still going to be the fighter in the room, because you belong at practice. Maybe I can't fight, big deal, right? I'm going to take attendance and post it up so that I'm doing something for people. Because then you're doing something, right? For practice, for the community, and you're still actively being part of that community. Take an active part in your healing. And we just talked a bunch about that, and continue to practice and work out. And so, this is one of those places, is a lot of people are like, oh, my shoulder is gone. Believe me, I've been in this place. So I can't do nothing. I'm going to sit while my shoulder heals. Well, last time I checked, your feet aren't hurt, your knees aren't hurt, and your legs still work. There's tons of stuff you can still do. It's, and to tell you the truth, those are probably the 3 biggest things that most of our fighting community needs to learn to goddamn do. So, this is an opportunity to find the things. And if that means, I want some hand strength, I'm going to get some grippers. I'm going to go out and get some climbing grippers for strength. I'm going to just get hand strength, or I'm going to watch every video, every show, so that I understand what I'm doing better, so I can be a better fighter mentally. All of those pieces are part of their recovery process. Eli.
Yeah. Someone posted on Facebook a comment about most of us having a higher pain threshold. And I want to just comment that whenever I've gone to the doctor and they ask me where it is on the pain scale of 1 to 10, I have to explain there's a difference between the discomfort scale and the pain scale, because something can be uncomfortable, but I don't consider it getting into pain until I need to come and see you, or I need to take something for it, or it's only uncomfortable, but there's this other thing, and I don't know if other people have that issue. I think that I don't agree that we have a higher pain threshold, but I think we are more conditioned to certain kinds of pains, like getting hit with a stick. That's not, because I know there are people who try it for the first time and get hit just freak out sometimes, and most of us don't. You do it long enough and you go, oh yeah, I got hit. Some of them are real stingers and you can tell the difference, but mostly it's like, oh yeah, that'll leave a bruise. It's not a higher pain scale, it's a higher pain conditioning to certain kinds of pain inputs. But I've had to explain that to doctors, as I think how many of us have gone into a doctor with a sword and a shield and a video to explain what we've done and what it is we're trying to do and get back to. So I wanted to make that comment.
No, I think that was a great comment. There's a, we talked a little bit about, thinking about our sport and there's going to be that place where you have doubts all along the way. And, I think, for a lot of people, those doubts would normally have taken them out of the game, or they would have been like, okay, well, I did it, I'm good. I think our community has, there's that bond in the community, and that sometimes that motivation to get us back healthy again so that we can continue going. And sometimes that isn't, I'm going to continue going so I can get knighted, or I'm going to, win crown or whatever. That continue is, I just want to be around my friends. Hey, you know what? I'm going to stand in back of the melee and hold a banner, because it's a job that needs to be done. I'm going to run commands back and forth between commanders so that somebody else doesn't have to do it. But you're still active in the game. Does that mean you're going to be the best fighter in the world again? No, but you're literally serving and being part of the community. And I think that's, for a lot of people, that's really, you could be the biggest, baddest person for some period of time, and then that goes away. There's always somebody else. And to tell you the truth, you're not the biggest, baddest person, because there's always somebody at the same time that could probably kick your ass. And those are the people you should be trying to find, by the way. But anyways, the big piece is to feel good about yourself, find what it takes, and and talk to people. It's like, hey, you got something I can do? Somebody had posted is like, okay, when I was broke, I went and got my marshalate. I was like, oh, That's a great freaking idea. I know a lot of knights that should do that. So, it's that kind of thing that's important, and it makes our community better. And I think it really does go back to what Helga talked about, and that is we have to support these people, and we have to help find, if there's something, if you're at practice, and especially if you're running a practice or you're a teacher or coach there, find something. And I'm going to tell you, if that just means, hey, can you go over there and watch them do this blow because I know you're good at it, then go, and go and as a teacher, go over there, bring them and say, hey, this person does this great, listen to what they have to say, and then I'm going to come back and we'll go through some more stuff. But that keeps them involved, keeps them coming back. And then when they're feeling better, they're been at practice. Me and Ronwalder talk about this all the time. Practice being at practice. When I had shoulder surgeries and I couldn't do nothing, I still went to every practice. And we congratulate people for just practicing being at practice. And that, if that means stopping in for 10 minutes, like, hey, hope everybody's doing great or whatever, or just hanging around the whole practice, then that's what it is. For those practices out there, a lot of practices are you put on stuff and you throw a stick all day. That's a practice. So be aware that there's other things like, I haven't been able to do a lot of stuff, mostly through COVID here, but we do drills, footwork drills, we do warm-ups, we do all kinds of other stuff. I have people that aren't even fighters doing footwork drills, because agility is agility, and no matter what you do. And in life, the better you understand where your feet and hips and body are, the more likely you won't fall, the better you going in as you age, the better you're able to, control your movement and all of that kind of stuff. It's super important. But you can present those things. And if that means, hey, I'm going to bring some, and I do this all the time, if I'm going to bring a ladder and cones and training equipment, if that means you're going to bring, maybe you bring some heavy balls, stuff like that, slam balls and stuff like that, and practice some power drills. Sven does that all the time for one of his practices. No one getting in stick. If that means I'm going to pick up a super light sword and just work on, we play a tag drill where we're just don't even have swords. It's literally a game of tag. We're just trying to touch the other person. And that's a reaction drill. Again, no armor, no people getting hurt. Depending on where you are, that's a great start. So there's some ideas around just getting people involved. And I think that's a really, really important piece. Helga, I'm gonna throw, I'll throw, here's a good one. If necessary, go seek out a counselor.
Yeah. Are we talking like mental health professional or other person in the SCA?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we're going to start on other person in the SCA, because then we can have some serious conversation about mental health. Having somebody in your corner when you so you talk about always be positive. And so I'm going to say that I have a slightly different take on that one. And mine is, don't make yourself somebody else's problem unless they've agreed to it. And don't let your negativity fuck up somebody else's positivity. So, don't be a fun vampire. Is because while you're recovering from injury, you're going to have bad days. You're going to have depression days. You're going to have days where that new young fighter, if you're recovering and you're practicing going to practice, and that new young fighter comes up to you and it's like, oh my God, I just want to fangirl on you. And you're like, I literally just want to eat with this hand right now. That's all I can fuck about. I'm here because I need to be. And you have to be excited for them. So finding a coach or a counselor within the SCA gives you a space where you can then exit out and be like, I'm very frustrated about the fact that I don't feel like I can hold my shield the same way again. I don't feel like I can throw the same. I can't generate power the same way. I'm frustrated because I'm experiencing fear in armor. I'll tell you, I have done some crazy shit in my life. My first panic attack that I ever had in my world was in armor, on the field, fighting somebody that I know is completely safe. And I actually had my counselor buddy who happened to be my knight because, he tolerates me very well. And I got off the field and I said, I don't know what I'm experiencing right now. And he's like, that kind of looks like a panic attack. And I'm like, I don't have these. This is anger inducing. I don't have these. I don't experience crying. I don't get emotional about shit. There's none of this. I don't understand this. And he's like, let's go for ice cream. Come on, little square. We're going this way. And we did. And I proceeded to lose my mind for like 2 hours. Like, I don't think I stopped talking. Having a person in your corner that can then also be like, okay, now we're ready to go out in public is great while you're recovering, especially at practice. Having your safety buddy at practice for like when you walk over and you're like, I am losing my mind right now because I don't know, my body is doing weird things and then my brain is doing another thing. And your friend can be like, let's go over here now. Like, we're good. I'm gonna highly recommend that, especially when coming back from a really bad injury that's causing some mental blockages. On the other front, having a counselor or having a trainer that is completely outside of the SCA, highly recommend. While you're dealing with legit issues about being injured, having a mental health professional that can address it. And I'll probably say that most sports physios are actually capable of dealing with this when you're like, I'm dealing with fear about doing this. You just need to be honest with your trainer, because your trainer has probably seen it in like dozens of other clients. And actually knows how to address it both physically and mentally, to be like, here, read this pamphlet. Now understand that you're experiencing depression. Now go lift more.
Yes.
And that's, I ended up being very lucky at that point in time while I was recovering, is that I had a sports physio that also had a background in mental and emotional recovery of injuries. And so she would give me homework. Because I'd never been this like almost 5 years out. Like, I'd never been injured that long in my life. Like,
yeah,
I've reset my own nose. I didn't give a fuck. This one just because I kept having to get back out of armor. I'd get in armor and then I'd be in for a week and then I would get out of armor because I couldn't use my arm again. Or it hurt so bad, like that silent scream thing. Mm-hmm. When you roll over in the middle of the night and you hit a 10 when you're dead asleep. Yeah. You'll wake up the dogs, you'll wake up the neighbors, everything else like that, and then you're going to experience rage. Or at least I did. But having that, even if you need to seek out and go see a therapist about getting over some of your fear issues, do it. Just swallow the ego and understand you may experience panic attacks. You may experience like emotion while fighting that you have never experienced in your entire life because you're processing through a fear center in your brain. Just do it. It's also, as Eliahu just posted in our chat, it's the stages of grief. You're mourning the loss of identity while you're getting better.
So, yep. It's interesting. I need you in a month on our coaching a student through a meltdown episode.
Stages of grief is immediately what I thought of when you were talking, because there's denial, you keep doing it anyway. There's anger at the situation. There's there's all sorts. It's exactly it. It's really resonated with me. And I second your recommendation for seeing a counselor or therapist. What was it, 30 plus years ago? I was on the board of directors. Work was terrible. I was going through a divorce and my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Damn right I went to see a counselor, and that who really helped me through things and helped me process all of that. I don't talk about that very much, but I certainly recommend, and that it can be very, very helpful. And I think it was brilliant that you found somebody who could not only help you with the physical recovery, but was trained in the mental recovery from injury as well. I think that's terrific.
My favorite thing about her is that she had no issue calling me on my yeah butts. In the SCA, a lot of us are very polite until you're the high end and everything else like that. You can be like, you are yeah butting right now. Like, you have to have that clout. Guess what? A counselor and a trainer will just be like, you are literally paying me to tell you that you are butting me right now. Can we not? So recommended.
So, I think through all of this, what we're telling people is you got to be patient about your recovery, because you're going to fall back sometimes. And I know I had a number of times. And Helga, I'm sure you have. Eli, same thing. Everybody. There's going to be times when, you want to train so hard that you overtrain and then you fall back. But you got to be patient in your recovery, and just, listen to your body and don't rush. Everybody's here, your community's here. You don't have to rush to get to the end, because it may truly be the end if you rush too fast. So be aware of that. I think that's a huge piece. I'm going to post an article later, and it has a lot of stuff, a lot of things we're talking about, a lot of stuff that's coming out in the conversation. And the points I'm going through are literally in that article, and hopefully that'll help everybody. I didn't even read this part of the article because I missed it. And that is, they have an area about for the teachers and the coaches. It's be empathetic to somebody that's struggling and hurt and trying to recover and still wants to come back. Help them. Don't ignore them. Don't roll off to the next person that you think you can get knighted, because that's bullshit. Right? The other person gave you their time, their effort. You still owe them something. And as long as they still do that, you still need to be there for them. That's hopefully you're there for everybody at practice, but especially those who really have been putting that time. Just because they're hurt doesn't mean they're done. And I think that, Helga, that goes off to what you talked earlier before we got on about what happens in pro sports, right? Helga had said that pro sports, one big reason a lot of times people can't make it back is because they don't end up with that support from their coaching staff. You're pretty much looked at as it's next to impossible that them come back 100%. So I'm going to move on to the next piece of, and I think this is how Eli put it, next piece of meat. And I was like, ooh, that's rough. But it was good because I didn't really think of it that way until you guys brought that up. Again, we've been talking about it, work with their self-esteem. So when sometimes people just don't want to hear it's going to be okay, let them, and this is the hard part, let them be sad. But then when you see that they're done, build them back up. Even if it's just picking one thing they can do because you've seen them do it, and have them do it. That's the first step on their road back. So, just be aware that first step a lot of times is really the one step they need to do it on their own. And you have to be able to give them that step, and pat them on their back and do that piece. Because again, we're not playing professional sports. This person, maybe, I know a lot of people, there's and I don't know everybody's name online here, but somebody was like, 1 crown 3 times. It was rough when I blew out run crown with a torn ACL 3 times. It's rough when you blow out the second one, but here's an example of somebody not in their peak condition and still winning a lot, right? So we're not in a sport that we have to be in our peak condition necessarily, but the key is that, that you're still helping that person move on. People that are at that level, a lot of times it's just, like Helga, it's that meanness in us that's going to make us do something, but for newer people, that's not necessarily there. They're not, maybe, that attachment isn't as deep. So be aware, you could really, still change somebody's life by showing support and empathy. So, and kind of, it goes back into that team play. And I think that's the biggest piece, we're a team. Without a team, you're not going to be as good, because it's all feeding back into itself. And that's what's so important. That's a huge piece of, Eli, you can, you come to our practices a lot, right? And you've lived through that team piece,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think well, we were talking before, mentioned community, and it is, and it's a generally very supportive community. And I know that that's not that way in all parts of the SCA. I think one of the, and I think we've all seen some of the, what I tend to think of as cults of personality tend to be not about community as much, at least in my observation. But I think what we have is a community that's really supportive. And I think one of the things I wanted to touch on, going back to something that was said, is that Helga said about the people who come out and just want to have fun. I think sometimes there's been a dichotomy between the people who consider themselves serious students of the art and people who just want to have fun. Because people who consider themselves serious students of the art have fun doing it seriously. But there are people who just want to play. And I think that there's been, if there's been a split in the fighting community, sometimes it's been that between those groups. And as Helga said, there's a place for everybody in that, in what we do. And I think that's really good. And I think here, let me show you something. Hey, is it okay if I show you something? Hey, I noticed you're doing this thing. Hey, I noticed this. Hey, have you thought about this? It's incredibly helpful and supportive and wonderful in a way that I haven't always experienced in other places. And actually something that I took into the classroom when I started teaching. I would tell students that when they after they graduate, they're out working, when they're trying to get a job, they're competing against each other. But once they get a job, they should be collaborating with their coworkers. And while you're in the classroom, you should be collaborating. If you know how to do something that somebody else is struggling with, show them. Don't collaborate during tests, but all the other time, help each other. You know something, share it with other people. They know something, they should share it with you. And so really the lesson of that supportive community from the society I took into the classroom with me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's we're pulling in, and I think everybody does this. We pull in life experiences, and a lot of us, the society is a big part of our life. So we're pulling in those life experiences and using them to hopefully help others, right? And that's what teaching is all about. And I think it's also, it helps us understand people because we're all doing the same thing. Again, as a coach, there's expectations. Especially if you're, maybe that person, your squire, or you're training specifically, we're asked to train that person. There are times when you may want to look at them and go, when your doctor says you can do this, tell me, because then I'm going to start pushing you a little harder. That way, because sometimes they need that. And sometimes it's not clear when they need that. And sometimes you have to ask, it's like, hey, did you get your doctor's clearance yet? Or, how you feeling? Those kinds of things. So, it's hard to read. Some people can read things better than others. If you can't, then just ask. You ask that person to be truthful with you. It's like, no, I'm not ready yet. Okay, that's cool. How about we find something else? How about you go, I'm going to send you a bunch of videos that I'd like you to watch and we'll talk about. There is nothing better in our sport than thinking about what what to be in, because I tell you, the more you think, the more you want to do. And that's a big part of playing of getting somebody back on the field and getting somebody healthy again. And that may just be the drive they need to push them back through recovery, because a lot of people will give up on recovery. And, no matter what, if you can help somebody through the recovery, even if they don't come back and fight, you win, because you help somebody get better, and that's what community is about. And, Helga nailed it in the beginning. The reason she got past what I looked at as like, I'd just go lay down somewhere and die. It was because she had community and she had these friends around her that supported her. And now we get to see her here, see that motivation and all of those great things that, she gives to this community is because of those people. And those people got it from other people. And that's how we layer all of this all the way up. And that's how we all help each other's life get better, right? And we're standing on top of other people helping you. And now it's your turn to help someone else. So be aware of that. Helga, you agree? I mean, that it sounds like probably one of the biggest pieces between your PT person and the people that are around you, right?
Yeah, that's I cannot be more grateful for those people. I'm over here having a feel right now.
I'm sorry about that.
You're fine. But yeah, that's community is the reason why I'm still here. And you made the comment earlier about like, cool, great, you're not ready to be back in rig. Analyze this video and send me the breakdown. Like I do that with my squires while they're recovering from stuff. Or for instance, that's actually amusingly the whole reason the video breakdown thing started, because that's what Sean did with me while I was angry, so angry I could not fight. He was just like, here's some video, write me a book report. And I would like obsess and then write him like 10 pages and he'd be like, oh my God. How much did you watch that? A lot. And so that's a big thing is I'm going to say, give them an outlet. Also, one of the things that I would like to mention is, so we're talking about like, be empathetic to the students that are recovering. Also understand when you run out of empathy. Because all of us are going to do that. So know that a couple stages before you run out of empathy, so you can help that student have somebody else. Nobody is anybody's singular savior of like, we're going to bring them back and it's all on you. Crush the idea that we are all singular beings and not a community, even in recovery and in helping somebody recover. Because if we do that, again, we foster more community and we will continue to strive and follow all these cool rules that all of us just talked about and all these experiences of you can help somebody, but you don't have to be the only person that helps them.
Yep, I agree. And, and this kind of falls back on probably one of the last pieces. And I really want to talk about this one just for a second. We talk about, as a coach and a trainer, not only do you have to have empathy and try to work that person through those layers to get them hopefully back to a place where, they feel good about themselves one way or the other, in armor, out of armor, I don't care. But also be aware when you see the depression so deep in them that they need some other kind of help. And because, or you don't hear from them or any of those pieces, because those are dangerous times. And these were your friends. These are the times they absolutely need you. Not easy to do, but it's life-saving for some people. So just this, it's interesting. This article ended in that. And I think that needed to end in that is like, all through this, we talk about helping somebody. This is the one place that they would need the most help ever. And that's the time to, help them, like, hey, let's, if you need to talk or how you doing or call, or, maybe it's time for a counselor, or, hey, I'm going to this counselor guy, you want to come with me? Any way to try to help them out of that place where their feet are stuck and maybe you can't get them out, and it takes a professional to get them out. But just making them think second about some bad decisions they may make makes a world of difference. So there, please definitely be aware of that. So, well, we got about 10 more minutes in the show. Anybody, Helga, you got anything you want to kind of throw out there at the end? I think it was a great show. Thank you guys for what ended up being. I'm like, oh, what are we going to cover?
we covered a
And I
bunch.
think you
Is
killed it.
one, use the pooled knowledge to recover from your injury to fight. That would be the thing that I would say is, I don't know a fighter that hasn't been injured on the field. Like, for reals. I'm trying to think right now. Like, I think I know a couple unbelts that don't have bad injuries. One of them being my Squire, because we fixed his wrap before he fucked up his elbow.
Yeah.
But I don't know of a high-end fighter that hasn't had an ACL issue or a shoulder issue or a elbow issue. We do a relatively weird body impactful sport. And so if you're starting to develop problems, talk about it. My elbow hurts. My forearm's really tired at the end of practice. I don't feel like my knee is steady when I'm doing this. Talk early, talk often, normalize these conversations, because then maybe we'll see less catastrophic injuries because we're all not dying on our own ego. I know that I've said that multiple times, but as a person that literally has a giant scar due to my own ego, like, can we just not? Like, it'd be fantastic.
No, and I agree with you. I mean, it was funny because you talk about, your elbow hurting. I almost quit 2 years in because my elbow hurt so much. I used to, in crown tournaments, I used to use my foot because I couldn't pull my sword up. If I missed somebody, my sword would be on the ground, the tip would be on the ground. And I'd kick it up with my foot so I'd get it back on my shoulder, and I'm screaming in pain, but, I was still going to fight. And then met somebody from Meridies, a dude from Meridies. He's like, oh, do this Tai Chi stretch. And months later, maybe like 2 months later, I'm like, woo, pain-free. This is awesome, and it's those kinds of things. People have answers out there, and the worst you can do is, try them, and see if they help that. But, you nailed it on, hey, my knee hurts a little bit when I do this. So, they're like, oh, well, let's check out your knee to foot balance. Are you outside or are you over that foot? Are you inside? When you throw, does your knee fall inside or outside of your line of your toes? All of those pieces make a huge difference. So, Eli, I think you probably have a little bit on that.
Yeah, we had an episode about evaluating your equipment, and we're talking about evaluating somebody's body and their stance. You mentioned stretching. I see very few people warm up and do dynamic stretching in motion before fighting and do cool downs and static stretching afterwards. And those are injury prevention methods. The same way that you're talking about evaluating somebody's stance and their movement and so on, we were also talking in another episode about evaluating their armor. And those work together. Your body and the way you move and your armor and the way it fits and the way it moves with you, works with you. Some people get injured because they're fighting their armor. They're just throwing on whatever they have, and they don't understand the fit evaluation, how it all should work, with the different body parts and the way they move. So understanding all of that, I mean, that's why one of the reasons we're doing this is to share that kind of knowledge. And if you're not sure about it, ask. And if you think you're sure about it, why don't you ask somebody to double check things anyway? Yeah, and I do a lot more stretching than I used to. And one of the things that I think I talked about before, it may have been a different episode or a different forum, in getting older, is you have to be smarter about things. That includes warm up and stretching and technique and sleep and hydration and eating and nutrition. I've been reading continuing to read about sports nutrition and breathing techniques, and see people holding their breath, which is also a protective thing while they're trying to do something, and that's not good. Seeing people not eat at all during the day. And yeah, when I was starting out, I may have at times, like at Penzic, been hanging out late into the night, consuming adult beverages, and then getting up and early and fighting all day and not eating during the day and then doing it again.
People
And
do
then
that.
we all did that. And it was terrible for us. And getting healthy habits early on can help maintain your long-term viability in fighting, but also your long-term health. Fighting, I think often we think of fighting as something that will injure us rather than something that can strengthen us. And if that's the only strength conditioning exercise you're doing is fighting, you're more prone to injury as well. So there are a lot of moving parts to this.
Well, and I think that's why we're here. We have shows that cover some of those things, and we're just trying to educate people. And that's why we started Coach's Corner. And I hope people are getting stuff out of that. And, we kind of touch base here and there to about previous episodes that kind of fit in. And I hope that people, if we save a few people, I'm pretty happy. If people get smarter about fighting and training, I think we're all winning. So, and when I say we all, that's everybody who participates and posts and watch these shows and everything else. So I thank everybody for that. So we got a couple minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and we'll get Tristan back on. Oh, he's back on. How you like that? Hey, Tristan, do you know what we got coming up? I do.
Yes, I do. That is, we have the East Heroes and Traditions. Sorry, I'm trying to get the highlight here. There we go. We're Al-Anon's hosting the East Heroes and Traditions once again. That episode, I think we did the West first, and then it's going to be the East. So I think that's slated for next Friday evening.
Yep, that's exactly it. And they're a great series. This one I think is covering the very early Eastern stuff. I always loved hearing about it because there's lots of stuff like they did what, so it's those have been a lot of fun. They remind me a lot of everything from Ducal interviews to all the stuff that Helga did through all the COVID piece. It helped us understand the SCA better. And let's be real. I think we all enjoy it, and the more we understand it, the more we get to enjoy it even more because we have more understanding of what's going on. So definitely catch those. Al-Anon's doing a great job pulling in people for those, and they should be great. This one I'm looking forward to because I know although I know a lot from people from out west. His first episode lost me, but the second one was much easier. But this one I've known a lot of people from the East, know a lot of stories because we're on this side of the country. So looking forward to them. And then we have a couple episodes after that should be good. In a conversation we got a couple more conversations with some great fighters coming up. So we have a lot of stuff planned out, and we're looking forward to sharing some more. And please post on the SCA Coaches Corner page of anything that there's anything you find that you would like us to talk about. That'd be great. Even if it's just a short subject. And I think we're going to try to put something together with Eli on breathing and things like that in one of our new short series subjects and post it out there. They're looking for like half hour, 45-minute conversations. And if it's something good, we'll pull you in and we'll have just a short conversation. We'll post it up and hopefully people can learn from it.
This one I'm supposed to be snarky and say, do any of us talk under 45 minutes?
I know. Don't say that. I just won't do the show.
I'm out. Sorry.
This is one of the few places where I'm the succinct one here, and rather than the long-winded one who has a story for everything.
But thanks for joining the show. I thank the coaches for coming out, and I hope everybody has a great night. Stay safe out there, please. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yep. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.